Hog Rider is one of the most iconic cards in Clash Royale and everyone unlocks it from the very start of the game. However, the majority of players don't know how and when to play him. So in this video, I'm going to cover decks, general rules, common mistakes and predictions to help you become a top ladder Hog Rider player. Starting off with some general rules that you should know, but I'm going to cover them anyways, mainly for the people below 6,000 trophies. So, first rule is to always play your Hog Rider next to the bridge. There's no need to play it on the bridge, as this is not only slower, but it can be dragged by buildings easier. So every time you play your Hog Rider, make sure it's in this position. Secondly, you want to be playing it first play if you get it in your starting hand. This is because you may catch them with a bad starting hand, which could allow you to get quite a big lead on them. And the third basic rule to make sure you're doing is to not mindlessly play your hog. For example, if your hog has cannon and you know they have it in cycle, don't go in for a Hog Rider because they're just going to get a +1 elixir trade against you. If you're going to do this, you need to support your Hog Rider. For example, an earthquake to destroy the cannon quicker so the Hog Rider connects on the tower. But this all depends on what card you have in your deck. Which leads me on to my next topic for you guys. What hog deck should you be playing? There are several well-established hog decks which all work very well, and I highly recommend you learn one or two of them. The first is 2.6 Hog. In my opinion, the most iconic deck in Clash Royale. Basically, the whole premise of this deck is to defend using the triangle and cycle as many Hog Riders as you can. But if you want a more detailed guide, check out my How to Play Hog 2.6 video, and that'll teach you 99% of what you need to know. The next deck, which is currently my favourite deck, is Hog EQ. As of July 2025, this is probably the best Hog deck. However, it is a bit harder to learn compared to the Hog 2.6. The last Hog deck I recommend you could use is Hog XE Nado, which is probably the easiest to get used to and works insanely well all the way from 2000 trophies to Ultimate Champion. And I know some of you like making your own homemade decks, but if you're serious about climbing ladder, I would definitely try using one of these. Common mistakes are everywhere when playing Hog, and they can cost you games, which is why it's important that you're aware of them. The most common mistake I see is when you've defended a big push, and then you don't counter push with a Hog Rider. For example, you're playing 2.6 Hog, and after you've defended you've got a full health Musketeer. You need to go Hog in front of it. This is because if you didn't, you'd save up your elixir, and then when you reach 10 elixir, you're going for a Hog. Except now you're going in for a Hog on its own, whereas before you had a Musketeer behind it. Another common mistake is overcommitting in single elixir. What this looks like in practice is going in for a Hog Rider when you have 4 elixir. Not only is this bad elixir management, but it can literally lose you the game right there. As if they full countered a Hog with, for example, Scalmy, you now have no elixir to defend it, which could end up taking your tower if you don't have the right cards. The last common mistake is only attacking one lane. Now this may sound a bit stupid as Hog Rider decks aren't meant to be played split lane, like Royal Hogs or Recruits are. But in certain scenarios where the Hog Rider isn't going to get any value, you should be playing it opposite lane. For example, your opponent plays a Sparky at the back. Your Hog Rider will get no value, essentially wasting 4 elixir. So you may as well apply pressure opposite lane and make them use elixir on the other side to stop them building up a big push in front of the Sparky. Now I'm going to talk about the most important thing if you're a semi-decent player, and that's predictions. Predictions are nowhere at the bottom of ladder, but everywhere at the top of ladder, and very often they are the difference between winning and losing. So the basic premise of knowing how to predict your opponent is knowing what counters to your hog they have, and whether they have them in cycle. And that's pretty much it. Pretty easy on paper, but it's quite hard in real games. So let me show you a step-by-step guide on how to get rally level predictions. First, identify what cards they have. Second, identify which of those cards are good counters to Hog Rider. Third, watch where they are in your opponent's cycle. Fourth, only predict when they have one of them in cycle. So, I'll show you a few examples of how this works in practice. You go into a game, identify what cards they have, and then you'll identify which cards are good counters to Hog Rider, in this case, Goblin Gang and Cannon. Now, you want to play Hogs like normal, but when they only have one in cycle, in this case it's Goblin Gang, there is a 99% chance they're going to play it when you hog. So you can log in behind your Hog Rider, killing the Goblin gang and getting massive damage. Second example, your opponent counters are guards and Inferno Tower. They have just used their Inferno Tower, so now you know they don't have it in cycle. So you Hog Rider as soon as you can, and you go in for your Evo Firecracker in behind to protect the guards, again, getting massive damage. And not only from the hog in this scenario, but also the Firecracker connection on the tower. Putting all these things together we've spoken about today, and practicing it, beating players will be a walk in the park.